Hey guys, I'm getting ready to make some more wine. This time it's going to be maple wine using my homemade maple syrup. I'm going to take 2 pints, which is 1 quart of maple syrup, 3 quarts of water, which will make a total of 1 gallon. I'm going to use the quick rise yeast for bread, just like I did with the other batches. And for nutrient, I've seen a lot of guys use or a lot of folks use grapes or raisins to get the nutrient. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use nanny berries, or what are also known as wild raisins, and that's going to be my nutrient. So I've got about maybe 2 tablespoons of wild raisins that were dried and the seeds removed. So that's it. The only ingredients in this wine is going to be 1 quart of maple syrup, 3 quarts of water, 1 package of quick rise bread yeast, and about 2 tablespoons of dried, de-seeded nanny berries or wild raisins. I'm going to be using this 5-gallon bucket to transfer my other wine into the secondary, and I'll just go ahead and sterilize it at the same time. But it only takes about 1 tablespoon of this for 5 gallons. Just pour that in there and top this off with water and let that sit for about 5 minutes. Just figured I'd give you guys a quick shot of what this iodine-based sanitizer looks like. It just gives it an amber color. Let everything sit in there for 5 minutes. Now, this is a store-bought sanitizer, but really you could just use bleach and then rinse everything really well. Or if you were using all glass objects or things that could stand boiling, you could just boil them for 10 minutes to sanitize them and then let them all air dry. But this stuff works pretty good. And we're really not completely sanitizing the stuff. All we're doing is we're getting most of the nasties out of there so that the yeast will have a chance to grow first. And once the yeast takes hold, we won't have to worry about it so much. But now that these have been sitting for 5 minutes, I'll just take them out. And I'll take them and sit them on a towel in the kitchen to air dry. Just like that. Stay. Hope that doesn't fall. Alright, so while this stuff's air drying, I'm just going to go ahead and take all my ingredients, put them in this pot over here. And what we're going to do is boil that for 10 minutes. Just to get any bacteria that may have built up in the maple syrup. And anything that might be growing in those nanny berries from the wild. What I'm going to do is I'll pour the syrup in here. Now these are my last 2 pints of syrup from almost 2 years ago. I've had them in the refrigerator the whole time. I have to give one little swig just because this is going to be the end of it. Just as good as ever. Now this is going to be a little weaker than what wine should be, because it should be 25% sugar, and mine's not going to be quite that. But one interesting thing I found is sometimes people will add malic or tartaric acid in the winemaking process to increase the acidity or for some reason. And the sugar sand that's in maple syrup is mostly malic and tartaric acid, so may just stumble into perfection. We'll see. Now this was my first batch of 2011. Nice light color. Man, that's good. It's almost a shame using it to make wine. But once we get this water and syrup in here and nanny berries, we'll just boil it for 10 minutes like I said. And for this last quart of water, I'm going to use these bottles so that I can get all the extra sugar out of there as much as possible. But we'll go ahead and put these nanny berries in here. You can see those nanny berries, they're pretty well dried out and they're floating, but once I get that boiling, they'll get down in there and soften up. Now I'm just going to leave those nanny berries right in the wine while it's making. That may be a mistake or it may not be, but again, I'm not going for perfection. I'm just trying to do things the easiest way possible because that's what kind of interests me most about the whole winemaking, beer making, is that you can get as complicated as you want, and you can also do it the easy way and still end up with something that's good and drinkable. Alright, so this is the last of it. Now I considered adding some cane sugar to bring that sugar level up to 25%, but then I'd be adding something that's, you know, not easily found around here. The way it is right now, I can go out and I can gather these nanny berries in the wild. I can gather that maple sap in the wild, and I can make this all from scratch. The only ingredient that I wouldn't have is the yeast, which I could use wild yeast that's found right in the air we breathe. So that's that. We'll just go ahead and bring that to a boil, let it boil for 10 minutes, and we'll be ready to, once it cools off, we'll be ready to put it in the carboy and start it fermenting. Alright, well, while we're waiting for that to boil, I figured I'd mention this is kind of reverse logic here, because I'm taking maple syrup and I'm adding water to it to get it down to 25% sugar, because that's what you want for wine, is 25% sugar, at least from what I understand. I'm still pretty new to this. And ideally what you would do if you were making maple wine is you would just take your fresh sap and boil it down, evaporate it until it's at 25% sugar, and that way you're ready to go. You're not wasting all that energy taking it all the way to 67% sugar, which is what's considered maple syrup. And that would save time, save energy, and you'd be using the fresh maple sap right out of the tree that way. But we're just doing it a little backwards just for the demonstration, and simply because I want to make some maple wine, and I had a quart of maple wine left over, and in another couple months I'll be making more maple syrup, so it's no big loss for me. I mean, it's not a precious commodity for me personally. For people that buy maple syrup though, it can be pretty expensive, so it might be best to just start with fresh sap, bring it down to 25% sugar, and you're ready to go without adding any water. The only thing you would have to add then is your nutrient and your yeast. Alright, so my pot's quit rattling. She's boiling. I'm going to turn her down so it's just a nice gentle boil with the lid on so I don't lose all that steam. And in 10 minutes that'll be sanitized enough for the winemaking, and then I just need to let that cool down to below 80 degrees and we'll be ready to add the yeast and start it fermenting. I guess if I wanted to, I could go ahead and take this right back down to syrup and bottle it up, and then I would have nannyberry infused maple syrup. Boy, that would be good on pancakes. I'm just going to give it a little stir to get those dried nannyberries kind of worked down in there. Just a nice gentle boil. I take the lid off, it almost stops boiling. But with that lid on, it'll boil nice and gently. Alright, well that's been simmering, boiling for about 10 minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and take it off the heat. We'll just let that cool with the lid on. Probably take a good hour or two for it to get down to about 80 degrees. And in that time, all my equipment will be drying off, and we'll be ready to start the fermentation. Oh, and one other thing I could do is, because this is a little bit lower sugar level than what's required for your typical wine, I could add some honey to it. And if I added honey to it, then I might be able to get away with calling it mead, because mead is technically made with honey, not maple syrup. Well, this is taking a little while. It's been almost an hour, and it's still 112 degrees. And the longer I let this sit out, the more chance there is for wild yeast and bacteria and stuff to get in there that might give the wine an off flavor. And I should have thought of this to start, because I forgot I had some ice. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the pot, put it in the sink, and I'm going to grab this bag of ice that my brother left over here from his beer brewing the other day. I'll just pour this ice around that, and it'll cool it off nice and quick. Get that ice out of our freezer, free up some space, and also get this cooled off. There we go. Because I don't remember the numbers, but we want this to be below 80 degrees so it doesn't kill the yeast. But if it gets too low a temperature, like below 70 or 60 or something, then it makes a good environment for the nasties to grow. So if we can keep it between 70 and 80, that's kind of the perfect environment for yeast to grow. So, alright, well that took longer than expected. It was about almost 2 hours for this to get below 80. But we're ready to go ahead and put it in the carboy. These have had a good chance to dry out. Stick that funnel in there. Pull this out of here. I think I'll go ahead and leave those little bits of nannyberry in the bottom of there. I'm actually going to go ahead and eat that. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this tube in this bun here. And put this in the bottle. I need to aerate this. So I'm just going to sit here and shake it for a good couple minutes, get a lot of oxygen in there. Just kind of swirl it around, shake it. And then we'll be ready to add the yeast. Alright, so got my yeast here. Need to take this out. Sit it back over here for a minute. I just want to pour the yeast in there and just let it sit. Put our little makeshift airlock back in there. Make sure that bun's nice and snug. And all I did is I took an old corn syrup bottle and just going to fit this tube down in there. And there's my airlock. It's kind of like a blow-off hose. A lot of these will foam up a lot, so you'd put this on there to start so the foam can come up out and into a container, and then you'd put your airlock on later. But really, this is an airlock right here. Once that starts bubbling, it's just going to go down in there, and this water is going to keep air from being able to feed back into here. That's it. Maple wine. Go ahead and let this sit for a couple weeks or however long, I'm not sure, until it quits bubbling. And then might run it off into a secondary to clarify it, and then we'll bottle it up and we'll have maple wine. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all the comments and support.